Hey up me duck YouTube, welcome back to another video with Rams fan YT. Bit earlier today for this video, but I'm sure you're thrilled to be here nonetheless. It's the penultimate episode in this series. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to stop a series completely. Definitely going to have a series 2 coming up as soon as the first series is over. You'll be all glad to know about that. Today's episode, though, let's not distract away from that, is the history of West Ham United. Well, the earliest generally accepted incarnation of West Ham United was founded in 1895 as Thames Ironworks Football Club, the largest and last surviving shipbuilder on the Thames. Thames Ironworks and Shipbuilding Company, by foreman and local Dave Taylor, and owner of the company Arnold Hills, and was announced in the Thames Ironworks Gazette of June 1895. Thames Ironworks was based in Weymouth Wharf in Blackwall and Canning Town, on both banks of the River Lee, where the Lee meets the Thames. All people who know London will know that sort of area. Thames Ironworks built many ships and other structures, the most famous being HMS Warrior. The last ship there was the dreadnought HMS Thunderer in 1912, and the yard shut soon afterwards. The repair yard of the Castle shipping line was a very near neighbour, and their work team, initially known as the Castle Swifts, would informally merge with the Thames Ironworks' own team, forming the United. The team played strictly on an amateur basis for 1895 at least, with a team featuring a number of works employees. Thomas Freeman was the ship's fireman, and Walter Parks, a clerk. Walter Tranter and James Lindsay were all boilermakers. Other employees included William Chapman, George Sage, and Fred Chamberlain, as well as apprentice riveter Charlie Dove, who was to have a great influence on the club's future at a later date. Thames Ironworks won the West Ham Charity Cup, contested by clubs in the West Ham locality. In 1895, they won the London League in 1897. They turned professional in 1898 upon entering the Southern League Second Division, and were promoted to the First Division at the first attempt. The following year, they came second from bottom, but established themselves as a fully fledged competitive team. They comfortably fended off the challenge of local rivals Fulham in a relegation playoff. They won 5-1 in late April 1900 and retained their First Division status. The team initially played in full dark blue kits, as inspired by Mr. Hills, who had been an Oxford University Blow, but changed the following season by adopting the sky blue shirts and white shorts combination, which was worn through 1897 to 1899. Following growing disputes over running and financing of the club, in June 1900, Thames Ironworks Football Club was disbanded, then almost immediately relaunched on the 5th of July 1900 as West Ham United Football Club, with Sid King as their manager and future manager Charlie Painter as his assistant. Because of the original works team's route and links, still represented upon the club badge actually, they are still known as the Irons amongst fans and the media. West Ham United joined the Western League for the 1901 season, while continuing Division 1. In 1907, West Ham were crowned the Western League Division 1B champions, and then defeated 1A champions Fulham 1-0 to become the Western League overall champions. The reborn club continued to play at their games at the Memorial Grounds in Plaistow. This was funded by Arnold Hills, but moved to a pitch in the Upton Park area in the guise of the Bowling Ground Stadium in 1904. West Ham's first game in their new home was against fierce rivals Millwall, which was themselves an Ironworks team, albeit for a rival company. This drew a crowd of around 10,000 fans, and with West Ham running out of 3-0 winners. And as the Daily Mirror wrote on the 2nd of September 1904, favoured by the weather turning fine after heavy rains of the morning, West Ham United began their season most auspiciously yesterday evening when they beat Millwall by 3-0 by their new enclosure at Upton Park. In 1919, still under King's leadership, West Ham gained entrance to the Football League Second Division, their first game being a 1-1 draw with Lincoln City, and were promoted to Division 1 3, also making it to the first ever FA Cup final to be held at the old Wembley Stadium. Their opponents were Bolton Wanderers. This was known as the White Horse Final, so named because an estimated 200,000 people came to see the match, spilling out onto the pitch. It had to be cleared prior to the kickoff by Billy, which was a giant white horse, although it was actually grey, being ridden by PC George Scory. The cup final match itself ended 2-0 to Bolton. The team enjoyed mixed success in Division 1, but retained their status for 10 years and reached the FA Cup semi-finals in 1933. In 1932, the club was relegated to Division 2, and long-term custodian Sid King was sacked after serving the club in the role of manager for 32 years. Don't really see that loyalty anymore, do you? And as a player from 1899 to 1903. Following relegation, King had mental health problems. He appeared drunk at a board meeting and soon after committed suicide. Very unfortunate that. He was replaced with his assistant manager, Charlie Painter, who himself had been with West Ham in a number of roles since 1897, and who went on to serve the team in this role until 1950 for a total of 480 games. The club spent most of the next 30 years in this division, first under Painter and then later under the leadership of former player Ted Fenton. Fenton succeeded in getting the club once again promoted to the top level in 1958, with the considerable input of player Malcolm Allison. Fenton helped develop both the initial batch of future West Ham stars and West Ham's approach to the game. Ron Greenwood, a name synonymous with most West Ham fans, was appointed as Fenton's successor in 1961 and soon led the club to 2 major trophies. Winning the 1964 FA Cup final, the team was led by the young Bobby Moore, who I'm pretty certain all English players and maybe even and fans around the world know. West Ham also won the European Cup Winners' Cup. During the 1966 FIFA World Cup, key members of the tournament winners for England were West Ham players, including captain Bobby Moore, Martin Peters, who scored in the final, and Jeff Hurst, who scored the first and only hat-tricks in a men's World Cup final. All 3 players had come from the youth team at West Ham. There is a champion statue in Barking Road opposite the Bowling Tavern, commemorating West Ham's 3 sons, who helped win the 1966 World Cup. Bobby Moore, Jeff Hurst and Martin Peters are the statue. Also included in the statue is actually Everton's Ray Wilson. They also won the FA Cup in 1975 by defeating Fulham by 2-0. The Fulham team had former England captains Alan Mullery and West Ham legend Bobby Moore. After a difficult start to the 1974-75 season, Greenwood moved himself upstairs to become general manager, and without informing the board, appointed his assistant John Lyle as team manager. The result was instant success. The team scored 20 goals in their first 4 games combined and won the FA Cup, becoming the last team to win the FA Cup with an all-English side when they beat Fulham in the 1975 final. Lyle then guided West Ham to another European Cup Winners' Cup final in 1976, though the team lost the match 4-2 to the Belgian side Anderlecht. Greenwood's tenure as general manager lasted less than 3 years, as he was appointed to manage England in the wake of Don Revie's resignation in 1977. In 1978, West Ham were again relegated to Division 2, but Lyle was retained as manager and led the team to an FA Cup final win against Arsenal in 1980. This was their last major honour. They reached the final by defeating Everton in the semi-final. The Hammers won 1-0 with a goal scored from a header by Trevor Brooking, in the 13th minute. This is notable as no team outside the top division has actually won the trophy since this date. West Ham were promoted to Division 1 in 1981 and finished in the top 10 of the First Division for the next 3 seasons before achieving their highest ever league finish of 3rd place in 1985-86, a group of players which came to be known as the Boys of 86. However, they suffered relegation again in 1989, which resulted in it was awarded an ex gratia payment of £100,000, but left the club in what Lyle described as upsetting circumstances, meriting only 73 words in a terse acknowledgement of his service in the club programme. Lyle left West Ham after 34 years in service. After Lyle, Louis Macari briefly led the team, though he resigned after less than a single season in order to clear his name of allegations of illegal betting while manager of Swindon Town. He was replaced by former player Billy Bonds. In Bonds' first full season of 1990-91, West Ham again secured promotion to Division 1. Now back in the top flight, Bonds saw West Ham through one of their most controversial seasons, with the club planning to introduce a bond scheme. There was crowd unrest. West Ham finished last and were relegated back to Division 2 after only 1 season. However, they rebounded strongly in 1992-93, with Trevor Morley and Clive Allen scoring 40 goals. They guaranteed themselves 2nd place on the last day of the season with a 2-0 home win against Cambridge United, and with it came promotion to the Premier League. With a team in the Premier League, there was need to rebuild the team. Oxford United player Joey Beauchamp was recruited for a fee of £1.2 million. Shortly after arriving at the club, however, he became unhappy, citing homesickness from his native Oxford as the reason. Bonds in particular found this attitude hard to understand compared to his own commitment. A never say die attitude, providing for Bonds further evidence of a decay in the modern game and modern player. 58 days later, Beauchamp was signed by Swindon Town for a club record combined fee of £800,000, which included defender Adrian Whitbread going in the opposite direction. Whitbread was valued at £750,000 in the deal. Assistant manager Harry Redknapp was also now taking a bigger role in the transfer of players, with the club's approval, with rumours of his old club AFC Bournemouth being prepared to offer him a position. The West Ham board and their managing director, Peter Storey, made a controversial move. The board were anxious not to lose Redknapp's services and offered Bonds a place away from the day-to-day affairs of the club on the West Ham board. This would have allowed them to appoint Redknapp as manager, but Bonds refused the post offered and walked away from the club. His accusations of deceit and manipulation by the board and by Redknapp have continued to cause ill feeling at the club. Peter Storey claimed that they had handled the situation correctly, saying if Harry had gone to Bournemouth, there was a good chance Bill would have resigned anyway, so we were in a no-win situation. We're sad that Bill is going and it's a big blow, but it's time to move on and we have appointed a great manager. Redknapp became manager on the 10th of August 1994. Redknapp's time at West Ham was notable for the turnover of players during his tenure and for the level of attractive football and success, which had not been seen since the management of John Lyall. Over 134 players passed through the club while he was manager, producing a net transfer fee deficit of £16 million, despite the £18 million sale of Rio Ferdinand to Leeds United. Some were notably successful, such as the signings of Stuart Pearce, Trevor Sinclair, Paulo Di Canio, John Ale Berkovic and Ian Wright. Meanwhile, some were expensive international players who had failed at West Ham, such as Florin Raducioli, Deva Sukta, who earned as much wages as the revenue gained from one entire stand, and yet only made 8 appearances. Christian Basila, who cost £720,000 and played only 86 minutes of football. Titi Kamara, Gary Charles, whose wages amounted to £4.4 million but made only 3 starts for the club. Rigobert Song, Paulo Futre and Marco Boogers. A player often quoted as one of the biggest failures in the Premier League. His first season in charge saw West Ham fighting the threat of relegation until the last few weeks. While his third season would see another relegation battle, always willing to enter the transfer market, Redknapp brought in the winter transfer window John Hartson and Paul Kitson, who added the impetus needed at the season's end. In 1999, West Ham finished 5th. This was their highest position in the top flight of football since 1986. They also won the Intertoto Cup, beating French club Metz to qualify for the 1999-2000 UEFA Cup. Things began to falter for Redknapp with a sale for £18 million to Leeds of Rio Ferdinand in November 2000. Redknapp used the transfer money poorly, with purchases such as Ragnvald Sommer, who cost £800,000 and played only 7 league games. Kamara and Song also featured. Redknapp felt he needed more funds with which to deal in the transfer market. Chairman Brown lost patience with Redknapp due to his demand for further transfer funds. In June 2001, called to a meeting with Brown expecting to discuss contracts, he was fired. His assistant Frank Lampard left too, making the sale of his son Frank Lampard Jr., the more famous Frank Lampard, inevitable. In the summer of 2001, he joined Chelsea for £11 million. With several names such as former player Alan Kirbishley now linked with the job. Chairman Brown recruited from within the club, appointing reserve team coach Glenn Roeder as manager on the 9th of May 2001. He had already failed in management with Gillingham, where he lost 22 of the 30 games he managed, and he also failed with Watford. His first big signing were the return of Don Hutchinson for £5 million and Czech centre-back Thomas Repka. Finishing 7th in his first season, Roeder, in his office at Upton Park, suffered a blocked blood vessel to the brain. As Roeder needed medical help and recuperation, former stalwart Trevor Brooking stood in as caretaker manager. Despite not losing another game, the Hammers were relegated on the last day of the season at Birmingham City, with a record for a relegated club of 42 points from a 38-game season. 10 seasons of top-tier football were over. Many top players, including Joe Cole, Di Canio, and Canute, all left the club. Next season, now in second tier, Roeder assumed his stint as manager. Results were still poor, however, and after an away defeat to Rotherham United, he was sacked on the 24th of August 2003. Brooking again took over as caretaker. He lost only one game, a 2-0 defeat to Gillingham, and is known as the best manager West Ham never had. Former Crystal Palace manager and player and manager, Crystal Palace former player and was also former manager of Reading, Alan Pardew, was lined up to be the next boss. Reading and their chairman, John Majewski, of which the stadium was named after, however, were reluctant to let him leave. After serving a period of notice and gardening leave, and with West Ham paying Reading £380,000 in compensation, he was appointed manager on the 18th of October 2003, their 10th manager. Pardew set out to rebuild the side, bringing in Nigel Reo-Coker, Marlon Harewood and Brian Deane. In his first season in charge, they made the playoff final, only to lose to Crystal Palace. His signings Bobby Zamora, Matthew Etherington, and veterans Chris Powell and Teddy Sheringham. I think Chris Powell was at Derby actually at one point. And Teddy Sheringham saw West Ham finishing 6th and subsequently beat Preston North End 1-0, thanks to a Zamora goal in the 2005 playoff final, securing a return to the Premier League. After ensuring promotion, Pardew said, "It's a team effort, we defended well, and we're back where we belong." On their return to the top division, West Ham finished 9th place. The highlight of the 2005-06 season, however, was the reaching of the FA Cup final and taking favourites Liverpool to a penalty shootout after a 3-3 draw. West Ham lost the shootout, but nonetheless gained entry to the following season's UEFA Cup, as Liverpool had already qualified for the Champions League. In August 2006, West Ham completed a major coup on the last day of a transfer window after completing the signings of Carlos Tevez and Javier Mascherano. The club was eventually bought by an Icelandic consortium by Egert Magnusson in November 2006. Manager Alan Pardew was sacked after poor form during the season and was replaced by former Charlton Athletic manager Alan Kirbishley. The signings of Mascherano and Tevez were investigated by the Premier League, who considered details of the transfer had been omitted from official records. The club was found guilty and fined £5.5 million in April 2007. However, West Ham avoided a points deduction, which ultimately became critical in their avoidance of relegation at the end of the 2006-07 season. Following on from this event, Wigan Athletic chairman Dave Whelan, supported by other sides facing possible relegation, including Fulham and Sheffield United, threatened legal action. West Ham escaped relegation by winning 7 of their last 9 games, including a 1-0 win over Arsenal. And on the last day of the season, they defeated newly crowned league champions Manchester United 1-0, with a goal by Tevez to finish 15th. In the 2007-08 season, West Ham remained reasonably in the top half of the table, with Freddie Ljungberg or something like that in the team. Despite a slew of injuries, new signing Craig Bellamy missed out most of the campaign, while Kieran Dyer was out from August 2007. The last game of the season at the Bowling Ground saw West Ham drew 2-2 against Aston Villa, ensuring a 10th place finish 3 points ahead of rivals Tottenham Hotspur. It was a 5-place improvement on the previous season, and most importantly, West Ham were never under realistic threat of relegation. After a row with the board over the sale of defenders Anton Ferdinand and George McCartney to Sunderland, manager Alan Kirbishley resigned on the 3rd of September 2008. His successor was former Chelsea striker Gianfranco Zola, and took over on the 11th of September 2008 to become the club's first non-British manager. In the 2008-09 season, West Ham finished 9th, a single-place improvement. In the 2009-10 season, West Ham started strongly, with a 2-0 win over newly promoted Wolverhampton Wanderers, with goals from Mark Noble and newly appointed captain Matthew Upson. A League Cup match against old rivals Millwall brought about violent riots outside the ground, as well as pitch invasions, and crowd trouble inside Upton Park. In August 2009, the financial concerns of the Icelandic owners' parent companies left the current owners unable to provide any funds until a new owner was found. The club's shirt sponsor, SBO Bet, provided the club with help to purchase a much-needed striker, the Italian Alessandro Diamanti. West Ham had a poor season, which involved a prolonged battle against relegation. They finally secured their survival with 2 games remaining by defeating Wigan 3-2. The club managed to take 35 points from 38 games, 7 the total they had when they were relegated 7 years prior to this. On the 11th of May 2010, 2 days after the end of the 2009-10 season, West Ham announced the termination of Zola's contract with immediate effect. On the 3rd of June 2010, Avram Grant signed a 4-year deal to become the next manager of West Ham, subject to a work permit. West Ham's form continued to be poor, with the team seldom outside the relegation zone, placing Grant's future as manager under serious doubt. A 4-0 Football League Cup quarter-final win over Manchester United was an otherwise bright spot in the disappointing season. West Ham's form in the Premier League did not affect their form in the 2 domestic cups. The Hammers reached the semi-final of the League Cup before being eliminated by eventual winners Birmingham City, as well as the quarter-final of the FA Cup before a 2-1 defeat at Stoke City. On the 15th of May 2011, West Ham's relegation to the Championship was confirmed after a comeback from Wigan at the DW Stadium. With West Ham leading 2-0 at half-time through two Demba Ba goals, Wigan battled back to win 3-2 thanks to an added time strike from Charles Nzogbia. Following the loss, West Ham announced the sacking of manager Avram Grant, just one season into his tenure. On the 1st of June 2011, Sam Allardyce was appointed as manager as Grant's replacement. The club finished third in the 2011-12 Football League Championship with 86 points and took part in the playoffs. They beat Cardiff City in the playoff semi-final 5-0 on aggregate to reach the final against Blackpool at Wembley on the 19th of May 2012. Carlton Cole opened the scoring, and although Blackpool equalised early in the second half, Ricardo Vazte scored the winner for West Ham in the 87th minute. West Ham, on their return to the Premier League, signed former players James Collins and George McCartney on permanent deals, as well as a record signing Matt Jarvis and Andy Carroll on loan. They won their first game of the season on the 18th of August 2012, a 1-0 win against Aston Villa, thanks to a Kevin Nolan goal. The highlight of the first half of the season was a 3-1 home win against reigning European champions Chelsea on the 1st of December 2012, which saw them in 8th position and 12th come the end of the year. On the 22nd of March 2013, West Ham secured a 99-year lease on the Olympic Stadium, with it planned to be used as their home ground for the 2016-17 season. 10th place was secured at the end of the season, with 9 home wins and only 3 away from home. Only 11 goals were scored, which was the lowest for the entire league. In the 2013-14 season, West Ham finished 13th in the Premier League. They also reached the semi-finals of the League Cup before losing 9-0 on aggregate to eventual Cup winners Manchester City. A feature of the season were the criticisms of manager Sam Allardyce by supporters relating to his perceived negative playing tactics. West Ham finished 12th in the 2014-15 Premier League, 1 place higher than the previous season. Minutes after the last game of the season, on the 24th of May 2015, the club announced that Allardyce's contract would not be renewed and that they would be seeking a new manager. By winning the Premier League Fair Play table for the 2014-15 season, West Ham qualified for the 2015-16 UEFA Europa League, entering the first qualifying round. On the 9th of June 2015, former West Ham player Slaven Bilic was appointed as manager on a 3-year contract. In Bilic's 4th game in charge, the team won at Anfield for the first time in 52 years, beating Liverpool 3-0, with goals from Manuel Lanzini, Mark Noble, and Diafra Sakho. At the end of the season, West Ham had finished 7th in the Premier League. The team broke several records for the club in the Premier League era, including the highest number of points at 62, the highest number of goals of the season is 65, the fewest games lost in the season at 8, and the lowest number of away defeats of 5. The season also marked the last season where the team played at a bowling ground, with them moving to the London Stadium for the next season, ending their 12-year stay at the stadium. Following Manchester United's win in the 2016 FA Cup final, West Ham took their Europa League place and qualified for the third qualifying round on the 2016-17 edition of the Cup. At the end of a tough season, first season at the London Stadium, the team finished 11th, along with having to deal with the departure of star man Dimitri Payet. However, the team suffered a poor start the following season, taking only 2 wins in their opening 11 games. Following a 4-1 defeat to Liverpool at home, and with the team threatened by relegation, Bilic was sacked on the 6th of November 2017. He was replaced by former Sunderland boss David Moyes on a contract to the end of the season. The team battled inconsistent form for the rest of the season, but managed to avoid relegation and finished 13th. Moyes was not offered a new contract and left the club on the expiration of it on the 16th of May 2018. On the 22nd of May 2018, the club appointed former Manchester City boss Manuel Pellegrini as the new manager on a 3-year deal contract. In his first season in charge, the Hammers finished 10th, once again suffering inconsistent form. However, after a poor first half of the following season, Pellegrini was sacked in December 2019, with the team only 1 point above relegation zone. His last game in charge was a 2-1 home loss to Leicester City. He was replaced by the departed David Moyes, who returned for a second spell in charge a day later. During the end of the 2010s, discontent grew with the club's support over the ownership of the club by David Sullivan. David Gold's ownership of the club. Following pitch invasions in a 3-0 home loss against Burnley on the 10th of March 2018. 2,500 supporters staged a protest march on the 29th of February 2020, ahead of the home game against Southampton, along the Greenway in Newham. So I hope you enjoyed that very much. I think that kind of just proves how sacking managers season after season just doesn't work, because they seemed at the very beginning to stick it out with their managers and had some very good success. Hope you enjoyed this video though, and subscribe if you want to stick around here. I will be doing League One's best winter transfer on the weekend, and I will be doing next week the history of Wolverhampton Wanderers, the last one of this series. So stick around, and it's goodbye for now.